Hey everybody, we're on our third and final lesson when it comes to body paragraphs. In this one, we are going to be focusing on coherence. All right, go ahead, bring that up. Get started on it. All right, so when we use the word coherence, what we're talking about is that something is coherent or cohesive, that things are connected. In terms of a body paragraph, the things that need to be connected are your ideas, your sentences. It is very similar to what we talked about with transitional topic sentences, right? We used a transition in our topic sentence to guide our reader from one paragraph to the next. But within that paragraph, you also want to use different types of techniques to guide your reader from one idea to the next within the paragraph, right? You also want to make sure that those ideas are not only connected, but are ordered in a logical manner. You know, if you've got like my example about Olive Garden, right? Cleanliness, service, and food. If I list those in that order, I want to go through them in that order. There has to be a logical progression. I chose to talk about the cleanliness first because I feel like that is something that people want to know about right away, but it's not necessarily my most important reason. I end with the food because that to me is the thing that I'm looking for the most in a good dining experience, right? It doesn't matter how clean the place is or how good the service is. If the food is awful, I'm not going back, right? And, you know, I want the service to be really good too, because even if the food is fantastic, if the service is rotten, I'm probably not going to go back, right? So I have reasons for all three of those criteria. But the reason that I ordered them in the way that I did was because, to me personally, that is the most impactful order. I want to know that the place is clean right away. I want to know that the service is good. And I really want to make sure the food is good. It would not be good of me then if I list them in that order. Olive Garden is a great place to eat because of its cleanliness, service, and food. If I then suddenly start talking about the food first. I just indicated that I would be talking about the cleanliness first. But let's say I did that. Let's say I did start with the cleanliness like I was supposed to. I start talking about how clean the parking lot is. I start talking about how clean the floors are. And then I start talking about how clean the silverware and plates and glasses are. And then all of a sudden I start talking about how the host was really friendly and how the server was very prompt. And then I go back and mention how clean the bathrooms were. Like, okay, the host is being friendly and the server being prompt. Those relate to my topic. Those ideas do belong in this paragraph. I haven't gone off topic. I haven't lost unity, but it makes no sense why I suddenly threw in those two examples about service in the middle of this section where I'm supposed to be focusing on the cleanliness, right? So there has to be a logical progression of your ideas, and they need to be connected. That is coherence, right? So some common ways to organize your ideas and then connect your supporting examples are to use common methods of organization. That is what methods of organization refers to the logical progression, right? The order of your ideas. Transition words and other connecting words is then how you guide your reader from one thought to the next, right? So the first thing you want to do is make sure you've got them in a good logical order, right? Everything is placed where it needs to be. And then you want to make sure that you have the connection, that you have the coherence, that is guiding your reader from one idea to the next, that it's not just a bunch of short sentences, one right after another. And, you want to make sure that it flows. Okay, so two common methods of organization are time order and emphatic order. And time order simply means you progress through the ideas as they occur in time, right? So this could involve transition words like first this, next this, after that, finally, right? It's literally taking it through time order from the beginning to the end. Emphatic order is more like what is least important, what is moderately important, and what is most important. Emphatic order is sometimes described as sort of save the best for last, right? So the least interesting or the least impactful detail is placed early on, and then you work your way down to the most interesting or most impactful. And that's what I was sort of explaining with my logic behind the order of my main points for my Olive Garden example, right? It's not that the cleanliness isn't important. It's just, maybe I can overlook something, right? If the parking lot's a mess, it might give me a bad impression to start with, but it's not probably going to deter me from ever going back if that's the only flaw. If the bathrooms aren't great, maybe I just will make sure I don't have to go. If the other elements are so extraordinary that I want to go back, but the cleanliness is just maybe not up to par totally. Now, obviously, there are some deal breakers where no matter how good the food is, no matter how good the service is, if there are really gross, disgusting things happening, then I'm not going back. But that's why cleanliness is included in the first place, right? Not because it's not important. It is important. That's the whole reason I have included it. But I place it first because to me, there is a progression of importance from my personal preference when it comes to dining out somewhere. I do want to make sure the place is clean, but there are some things that I can overlook. I really want to make sure that the service is good. I appreciate good service. I've worked in the restaurant industry for a good chunk of my adult life. I spent a lot of years there. So I really appreciate good service. However, I can tolerate certain things not being perfect when it comes to service, but it is super important. If I'm going to go out and spend money, the most important thing to me is that the food is good. So that is why I placed the food last. I saved the best for last. Why do we save the best for last? Because it is human nature. Psychology tells us that humans are more likely to remember best that which they read or hear last. So we do a pretty good job at remembering the beginning also. The middle often gets really hazy. But what we latch onto and remember the most is what we heard last. So if you are wanting to make sure that your reader at least remembers your most important idea, you're going to put that most important idea last, right? Emphatic order. All right. So here we have an example of a paragraph that is using time order to, organize the ideas. We have our topic sentence, but then all the rest of the sentences are out of order. And we have to figure out the correct order. How are we going to do that? First, we're going to look for some clues in the wording. Are there any transition words that will help us? And then we may also have to use a little bit of common sense, a little bit of logic. But the first thing we're going to look for is time transition words. So the topic sentence says, last summer, my family went on vacation to an amusement park. Okay. Here are the sentences from the paragraph, all mixed up. After several rides, my parents convinced me to see a show. That's clearly not going to come after the topic sentence because we haven't even talked about riding any rides yet. The next day, I was first in line for the roller coaster. Well, that's probably not going to come right after the topic sentence because we haven't even heard anything about this day yet. Before lunch, I rode on a water ride and got soaking wet. Okay, that's probably going to come pretty early in the paragraph because it's before lunch. Don't know, doesn't seem like that would be the first example to come after the topic sentence, but pretty close. Finally, it was time to head back to the hotel. Obviously, that's not going to come right after the topic sentence. Finally, as soon as we arrived, I headed for the long line at the roller coaster. That is definitely coming right after the topic sentence. As soon as we arrived, right? And then, you know, not quite sure, after several rides, my parents convinced me to see a show. Or before lunch, I rode on a water ride and got soaking wet. Probably before lunch, I rode on a water ride and got soaking wet. And then after several rides, my parents convinced me to see a show. The only reason I say that is because probably after getting soaking wet, his parents aren't going to take him right to see a show. He's going to ride some rides to dry off and then go see the show. Right? Finally, it was time to head back to the hotel. The next day, I was first in line for the roller coaster. You can kind of see how those little transition clues help us figure out the correct order of these ideas, right? So, all right. Oh, no, I was wrong. How about that? I tried to use logic. It didn't work, but I still was very close. Right, so as soon as we arrived, I headed for the long line of roller coaster. After several rides, my parents convinced me to see a show. Before lunch, I rode on a water ride and got soaking wet. Finally, it was time to head back to the hotel. So basically, from lunch until it was time to head back to the hotel, nothing significant happened, other than I guess I'm drying off. You know, so there will be times where, you know, looking at some of these examples, the logic might work, it might not, and because we all think of things differently. Now, you're writing your own paragraph, then the time order shouldn't be a question. You know the correct time order. You then just have to include the transitions to clue your reader in. Basically, what, you know, the transitions allow us to look at a deconstructed paragraph and figure out how to put it back together in the right order. And if it's done really well, we don't even have to use logic. The transitions will be clear. It will be evident how each sentence is connected to the one before it and the one that comes after it. It's almost like putting pieces of a puzzle together. There we go. And that is how the paragraph would look if it were in paragraph form and not just a list of unordered sentences. All right. You have another example here that you can take a look at. It's longer. All right. So you definitely want to think about looking at those transition words and figuring out what is likely the correct order of these sentences. The answer will be on the following slide, but try to figure it out on your own first, right? And then get the actual paragraph, how it would look. Then we have emphatic order. Oh, hey, look at this. It's the Olive Garden example. So our topic sentence says, Olive Garden is one of the best restaurants around. So we've got a list of sentences here that should belong in a paragraph, but they are randomly listed. We have to figure out the correct order based on the use of transition. And this is emphatic order, remember? So this is going from least impactful idea to most impactful idea. So another reason why Olive Garden is a great place to eat is their friendly service. Okay, well, another reason, we know that's not what comes after the topic sentence. We haven't heard a first reason yet. The servers are always friendly and super helpful, and even the managers will come around to ensure you are being taken care of. Okay, well, that sentence probably does relate to that first one on the list, but we still haven't found the one that should come right after the topic sentence. Finally, the most important reason Olive Garden is a wonderful restaurant is their delicious food. Well, no, finally, that's going to be at the end. Their pastas are also prepared well and always tasty. That has to do with the food. The endless salad is always fresh, and the endless breadsticks are always warm and buttery. That's the food. So if you are trying to decide where your next dine-out meal should come from, I highly recommend Olive Garden, as I know you won't be disappointed. That's definitely not coming right after the topic sentence. The first thing that makes Olive Garden a great place to dine is their cleanliness. The first thing, yes, that is going to come after the topic sentence. The tables and dinnerware are always clean, and even the bathrooms are clean and well stocked. That is going to come next because that is an example of the cleanliness. And I don't remember any other sentences before those relating to the cleanliness in any way. So we probably don't need to worry about finding any of those. Now we're going to move on to the next main idea. All right. So is it the service or the food? Well, another reason versus finally the most important reason. Well, it's another reason, right? Another versus finally. We know finally has to come at the end. We know another means in addition to, so we're clearly talking about the service next. Another reason why Olive Garden is a great place to eat is their friendly service. The servers are always friendly and super helpful, and even the managers will come around to ensure you are being taken care of. Now, finally, the most important reason Olive Garden is a wonderful restaurant is their delicious food. But we have two sentences relating to the food: salad and breadsticks and the pasta. So which example comes first? Well, if you look, the endless salad is always fresh and the endless breadsticks are always warm and buttery. Well, we get the salad and breadsticks first, right? So maybe that would come first. Maybe that would be the first example because you get those before you get pastas. But also look at the sentence about the pasta. Their pastas are also prepared well and always tasty. Also, meaning that this idea is being added on to an idea that was already stated. So we know for sure that yes, the example about the salad and breadsticks comes first, then the example about the pasta, and then this sentence right here is our concluding sentence, right? It is wrapping everything up and reminding the reader what our topic was, Olive Garden and why it's so great. So you can see what the order is here. You can see what the paragraph would actually look like in paragraph form. And then on the next slide, you have another example that you can work on your own. And again, remember, emphatic order, okay? So don't think about time order. Think about ideas that go from least impactful to most impactful. And then you can check yourself on the next slide and see it in paragraph form on the next slide. So you have to figure out the most logical order for your ideas. Once you have that in place, you then need transitions and a few other tricks to connect those details. It helps the reader understand your train of thought, how you're getting from one idea to the next, how it's all connected and related, how your ideas are progressing, how they are building on one another, just makes the paragraph flow, right? So there are several categories of transition words. There are addition transitions, like if you're adding on to an idea, comparison transitions, contrast transitions, concession, emphasis, example, summary / concluding, and time. The next handful of slides goes through each of those categories. So here we have common addition words, addition transition words that we commonly use. Again, also, and, another, finally, second, moreover, furthermore, right? That lets us know, those types of transition words let us know that we are adding on to an idea. Comparison words, also, by the same token, similarly, likewise, those types of transition words let us know that a comparison is being made, that is how two ideas are connected. They are connected because they are similar. So we use a comparison transition word to make that clear. Contrast words, although, but, however, unlike, yet, nonetheless, on the contrary, on the other hand. Those types of transition words let us know that there is a difference that's being pointed out, right? Not a similarity, a difference. So we use those types of words when we are sort of shifting the focus to how two things are different or how there is some sort of contrast. We have concession words, right? Of course, granted, even so, sometimes, admittedly, once in a while, regardless, those are concession words, right? Those are the words that we use to sort of admit something, right? I think I failed my biology exam. Admittedly, I only studied for an hour right before the test, right? So if you looked at that without the transition, though, I think I failed my biology exam. I only studied for an hour right before the test. Well, we understand how the two ideas are related to each other, but why is the author even sharing this with us? What are they actually getting at? You know, because if they said, I think I failed my biology exam, however, I only studied for an hour right before the test, that makes no sense. Like, then that indicates, well, they clearly thought studying for an hour right before the test was a good idea. They felt that would be effective. Maybe I'm a little concerned that this person doesn't understand that they need better study habits. But if they use the concession word here, I think I failed my biology exam. Admittedly, I only studied for an hour right before the test. Now we know that the reason these two sentences are one right after the next is because the author is making us aware that they realize they messed up, right? They are conceding their own culpability. They're taking accountability. They understand they messed up, right? So it's a concession transition. Then we have emphasis words, right? And again, emphasis is to sort of highlight or underscore something, to sort of, drive in the point. So above all, again, certainly, clearly, obviously, surely, of course, moreover, undoubtedly, right? Those are your emphasis words that you use to sort of highlight or drive home a point that you're trying to make, an important point that you're trying to make. Okay. Then you have example words, exactly what it sounds like. For example, for instance, specifically to illustrate, such as. And I think we have a good grasp on when we need to use example words when we're providing an example. Summary and concluding words, right? These come in handy as you get to the end of the paragraph or when you get to the end of a train of thought. right? Altogether, finally, all things considered, in conclusion, in other words, thus, therefore, ultimately, right? These aren't words that are only used at the end of a paragraph or are only used in a concluding paragraph. They are words that are used to sort of conclude a train of thought in a paragraph. Because you could have more than one train of thought in the paragraph as long as everything falls under the umbrella of the topic sentence, right? All right. Time words. I think we understand the use of time words also. Just don't forget to use them when needed. All right. Other connecting words that you can use are repeated words, but only if it's for an effect to tie ideas together. And it's not just repeating exact words, it's repeating forms of a word. For instance, this example, volunteering offers individuals many rewarding experiences. A volunteer may change the lives of others while changing his or her own life. Many opportunities exist to volunteer in local communities. Consider volunteering today. So it's repetition for a reason, not repetition because we just forgot we just used the same word already, or because we can't think of another way to say the same thing. We're just going to keep using the same word. It's repetition with a reason, repetition for an effect. That can create connection as you move from idea to the next. Synonyms. Remember, synonyms are words that spelled totally different words, but they mean similar things, right? So the ones that are in italics in this paragraph, well, we start with the first use, false ideas. We don't want to keep using that same phrase throughout the whole paragraph because, again, repetition for an effect is good, but repetition that actually sounds repetitive is not good. So what are some other words or phrases that we could use instead of false ideas? Okay, wrong idea, misconception, myth. Those are all different ways of expressing this same concept. Synonyms. Synonyms are great. You can also, and you should, use pronouns. Don't forget that pronouns help us avoid useless repetition as well. Remember, a pronoun takes the place of a noun. So instead of saying, Johnny over and over and over again, whenever I'm referring to Johnny, I can replace his name with a pronoun. Him, he, his, right? You don't have to keep referring to Congress as Congress every time. It could be they or them or theirs, right? It's a nice way to still make it clear who or what you're referring to without having to use the exact name of the person or object every single time. All right, parallel structure. Parallel structure is pattern. Using the same pattern of words, the same structure, to show that two or more ideas have the same level of importance. 3 equal examples, right? So here is an example of writing without parallel structure. Last weekend, I went swimming, jogging, and on a hike. You understand what I'm trying to convey. And you may not really even get tripped up over it unless it happens often in the thing that you're reading. But you know instinctively that that's not how it should have been worded. They are equal opportunity activities. There's nothing special about the hike. It is no more special than swimming or jogging. So why did I word it differently? I shouldn't have. It should have said, last weekend I went swimming, jogging, and hiking. Parallel structure, right? All right. Then you have a paragraph here that uses all these different type of tools that we just discussed to create coherence. We have the paragraph here. The ancient Egyptians were masters of preserving dead people's bodies by making mummies of them. Mummies, several thousand years old, have been discovered nearly intact. The skin, hair, teeth, fingernails, and toenails, and facial features of the mummies were evident. It is possible to diagnose the disease they suffered in life, such as smallpox, arthritis, and nutritional deficiencies. The process was remarkably effective. Sometimes apparent were the fatal afflictions of the dead people. A middle-aged king died from a blow to the head, and polio killed a child king. Mummification consisted of removing the internal organ, applying natural preservatives inside and out, and then wrapping the body in layers of bandages. All right, so this paragraph is not awful. It stays on topic. It has unity. It also has great support, but it lacks coherence. What's the first aspect of coherence? A logical order for the main ideas. Okay, we start off how the Egyptians were masters of preserving dead people's bodies, and then mummies several thousand years old, things that were still evident, able to diagnose things still, and then the process was remarkably effective, how these two different mummies died, and then all of a sudden mummification consisted of removing the internal organs. Why did we end with explaining the process? Doesn't it make more sense to explain the process first, then get into what they could learn from the mummies, and then the more impressive things that were actually discovered? I would end with being able to tell that a middle-aged king died from a blow to the head, and polio killed a child king. Like, that seems crazy to me. That seems most impactful to me. I would end with that. And then, yeah, the being able to, see their skin, their hair, and their teeth, their fingernails, and their facial features, and still able to diagnose certain diseases. Yeah, that's all cool, right? But it's pretty impressive that they could tell how these two died. The process, important enough to be included in the paragraph, but definitely not where we want the reader to focus. So start with the process, end with the most incredible information, and connect all of it, right? So what we have is a revised version of the paragraph, right? So anything in italics indicates the use of pronouns and repeated or restated words and phrases. So remember, it's not just that it's the same exact word repeated. It is a form or variation of the word that is used throughout. Anything in bold indicates transition words that have been added in. And underlining indicates how they decided to use parallel structure to make the paragraph more coherent. All right, so the ancient Egyptians were masters of preserving dead people's bodies by making mummies of them. In short, mummification consisted of removing the internal organs, applying natural preservatives inside and out, and then wrapping the body in layers of bandages. And the process was remarkably effective. Indeed, mummies several thousand years old have been discovered nearly intact. Their skin, hair, teeth, fingernails, and toenails, and facial features are still evident. Their diseases in life, such as smallpox, arthritis, and nutritional deficiencies, are still diagnosable. Even their fatal afflictions are still apparent. A middle-aged king died from a blow on the head. A child king died from polio. You can see how first rearranging the order of the examples or of the information helps the paragraph a lot. Now it makes sense, the order that they're going in, and it doesn't end with a really random, out of place explanation of the process. The process is explained up in the beginning now, where it should have been in the first place. And then we move through all of the really cool information. We have added in transition words to help connect our ideas. We've used this parallel structure here, right? Because all of this is really cool, right? The fact that these things are still evident, the fact that these things are still diagnosable, the fact that these things are still apparent. Very cool, right? They are all equally cool. So we've used that parallel structure to indicate that these are all related and they're all equal ideas. So very cool. What I want to do real quick right now is look at another sample essay and show you guys where I've marked for you. And this, you can see the handout below the video. It's right under the PowerPoint link. But if you go through, you see all of the ways that this student created coherence within the paragraph, right? It's really just making sure that you are smoothly flowing from one idea to the next. That I read a sentence of your paragraph, and when I read the next sentence, I understand why that next sentence is where it is. That I'm not reading the paragraph and like, where did this idea come from? How does it connect to the one I just read? Are they trying to show me that, is this an example of what they said here? Don't make me guess. You need to be providing the transition. You need to be providing the connection so that I don't have to guess, and it is clear how and why you are moving from one idea to the next within each paragraph. Just like you will provide the transitions at the beginning of each body paragraph to show me why we're going from one paragraph to the next, right? So transition in your topic sentence, transitions within your paragraphs also, okay? All right, so that kind of wraps up paragraph development. Point, support, and coherence, right? There will be some coherence items on the essay basic assignment quiz. And feel free to come back to this lesson if you need to. And at any point during the term, come back to this lesson. So if you have big questions right now, something, you wasn't quite clicking just yet, definitely reach out. Otherwise, I'm free to go ahead and move on to the next item.